Yay! Hi people. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Angie with Monday's show, Angela's Caches, the word of their testimony. I just want to thank people for following the show and shout out to the station, Conscious Consumer Network, CCN, one person, the actual ex-copper that I've been disseminating intel from, who's happy for me to share his name now. He's Richard Card. His wife has hooked up CCN onto the big screen and they just can't wait for the show. So I thought that was hilarious. He said I've got more front than Sainsbury's. So yeah, we're picking up a core following, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate you staying in touch, getting in touch. You know, probably the easiest way is via my Facebook until my website's up, or via the CCN website, you know, or whichever way, you'll find a way. But I do appreciate the networking. It's a huge part of it. We launched a second show last Thursday called Chasing Rainbows, and the subcategory of that is anomalies, adventures and answers with Angie. I'm no guru. I don't have all the answers, but I've got some. And I think, again, a sharing and networking thing, which is what this station is all about. Human beings were born to be in relationship, and when we start to network, somebody has got a piece of the jigsaw. So, and I just got contacted by somebody today after the show saying there have been anomalies, strangenesses that I, couldn't figure out. But it's incredible how, even as a child, I can remember filing things that didn't seem right to me as a very young child. I didn't know what to do with that information. I didn't know who to say anything to. But I can remember taking snapshots and thinking, that's strange, that's strange, that's strange. And the one that came up for me this afternoon, I was watching Max Spears' last interview, which is, I can so relate. I can so relate to where he was at. But he was talking about Canterbury and Marlborough. There's a big public school, big boarding school, establishment boarding school in Marlborough. And my father was in the Air Force, and to my knowledge, we didn't know about the lost bloodline thing or anything like that. So to my knowledge, he was, a serf, a working class Irish Catholic man, one of 16, who was in the catering corps in the Air Force. But I can remember we were stationed at Rudloe Manor in Corsham in Wiltshire, and I can remember going to Marlborough in the car with him a few times, and then him having access to the private boarding school. And I can remember thinking, that's strange, even back then, So the anomalies can stay as isolated strangenesses until there's a tipping point, there's a 100th monkey point, where they start to form a pattern and start to join. It's quite a painful journey sometimes, but it's worth it. So before I launch into my wonderful guest, Dearman is harassing me again via messenger inbox. I opened the first 3 to send to the police, who are handling my live investigation, the police in Avon and Somerset, together with Wiltshire and Metropolitan and Irish. But I'm not even going to open them anymore. But the ones I did open, the last one included all sorts of threats about, the station and how illegal it is to name names and how hard they're going to work to get me behind bars. And there's also been a threat floating around ever since the Hampstead case at the Royal Courts of Justice last summer. I think it was August. And I think Belinda and possibly Tracy were served with, it wasn't exactly a summons, it was something like, the judge would like to talk to you or something. It was intimidating legal stuff. And it's been floated around that there was one with my name on it too. I don't believe that, but if there is, as a whistleblower, you know, you're more than welcome. You know, you can just write to me, Angela Power Disney, Oldcastle, County Meath, Ireland, and it will find me. I don't, you know, I don't have any fear of being sued, because obviously being sued means in defense one can present the evidence in front of a judge and jury, which is all that has ever been asked for in that case. So, yeah, and threats against the station too. You know, I have the full backing of the station. They are awesome. You know, we have a commitment not to gratuitously fall out. You know, we've had different standpoints on some major things, but there's a commitment to a higher thing, which is truth and cooperation, honor and integrity. If we mess up, we put our hands up. And I have the full backing of my station. So that little tactic of let's frighten the station into firing Angie ain't going to fly. So later on in the show, I'm not going to feature, I bet I'm going to get this copper on the show eventually, even though he's a reluctant star, but I'm not going to feature one of his cracking emails today. I'll probably do that Thursday. But what I am going to do is read some really, really relevant information to do with Justice Lowell Goddard resigning. That happened when we were on air broadcasting. I don't know, probably last Thursday. Yeah, it was last Thursday, and he's filled me in with a lot of back detail to that. So I will share some of that after I've had a wonderful time with my guest. So I'm just going to introduce my guest to you. We met through a mutual friend, an MK survivor in America that I've been in touch with since 2009, 8 maybe. Awesome woman, lady, who was very, very instrumental in getting MK Ultra acknowledged and redressed in the States. And she put Stephanie in touch with me. And I've interviewed Stephanie once, and with poor technology in our little, you know, I was just wanting to get the truth out. I didn't care if I was voice crackling and, you know, darkness or whatever. I would just wanted to get the truth out. So I've done an interview with Steffi, and we've had some fun as well. I've posted a couple of crackers because she's my go-to person if I need to cheer up. I phone her for like a good slap round the chops, not really, but or a good laugh, or the most profound counselling. So Steffi's a survivor. She's a magnificent eccentric. She's an exotic animal breeder, an author, and just an amazing human being. And she's also one of my 3 admins on social media. She's my Rottweiler. When I'm sleeping and it's awake time in America, she's like fighting trolls and slaying them and running around and peacemaking and mediating and being generally awesome. So without further ado, are you there, Steffi?
Yeah, I was just basking in all the wonderful things you were saying to me. So can you hear me well? Is the video all right, or do we need to go to...
No, let's try with video for a while. If the quality's too bad, we'll just switch to audio only. Why don't you start with, just because this is a different audience to my YouTube channel, much as my YouTube channels, I love it, but this is a way bigger audience. So will you just tell people a little bit about yourself? Just take 5 minutes to introduce yourself.
Well, you already introduced me. I appreciate that. My name is Stephanie Oostveen. Married into that. I'm just Stephanie. I'm a survivor, just like all the other people. I should say, let me be more specific. Viewers of this program, to some extent, and now we're getting the your internet connection is unstable.
Okay. So why don't you just for a while cut your video? Just cut your video to see if that improves the quality of the sound.
Alrighty, let's hit down that icon. Does that work better?
Yeah, I can hear you better. So just to get the background on who you are and what you've survived.
Well, you know, it's really difficult to put into words what I've survived. I think I look at it at a more broader. Every day I'm surviving, and that's something that we all need to realize. Um, and so the experiences that I've gone through or survived, they've made me who I am today, or at least helped shape that. And throughout, you know, and then how you receive that, how you survive after the onslaught or the abuse is going to very often determine the future of anything else that you do in the future. I mean, it's all cause and effect. So I think a lot of this has to do with how you look at the situation. And you had mentioned to me briefly that we were going to discuss these things, which you and I talked about before, get somewhat of my background. And I thought about this a little bit this morning, and I said, well, I could sit there and go, yes, I was a one planned child in a family of 5 that was originally 8, extremely dysfunctional family, very colorful family. But I think all of our families are colorful. We all have our little skeletons. I was one of the children born that it was just my personality to bring out things that I always thought didn't make sense, and even at a small age. So as a result, the family reacted poorly, and it was, what do we do with her? Oh my God, we gave birth to her. She's walking, talking. She's, you know, an enemy among us. She's not fitting in with the scheme. And if you do research on child abuse and dysfunctional families, this is something that occurs, and it's with debate, every 3 to 5 generations. So there for a while, well, I guess I'm rambling a little bit, and I don't mean to, but
It's okay. We have time. We have time.
It was just, hey, I was the pick of the straw. I was the short straw in the family that was going to toot a large horn. And so it was my personality that always created a situation where I had to, I spoke up, I spoke my mind, and it didn't always seem to be what was appropriate for that day and age.
Yeah, I do that. I do that. It's referred to as blurting. Yeah, I do that too. And I wonder which came first, the chicken or the egg. Because that thing of not being able to filter what is socially appropriate to say, and especially when you're in a family where there's secrets. I don't know, I keep referring back to that lovely meme that says there's no such thing as black sheep in a family. It's just the most sensitive one who internalizes all the family dysfunction and then just acts it out or blurts it out.
Well, I think I see what you're saying. I think some of this was inherent in my personality, and secondly, it was also cultivated due to the environment. I don't want to sit there and go, I was born a poor white child, but I was a planned pregnancy, one of the only ones. It was planned that I'd be a male. I popped out a girl in a large, predominantly girl family, so it was like, oh man, it's the only one we tried for. What do we do with it? So as a result, and my father was a merchant marine, and my mother was a machine operator that worked the night shift. So the older siblings were responsible for taking care of me, and they, in fact, were children themselves. So there was a lot of neglect. There was abuse, and actually the way that I was really addressed was to just be left in a crib in a room and forgotten about. So that might sound, well, get over it, but I was like 7 years old still in that crib.
Yeah, no, there's evidence that came out of Romania when Ceausescu fell and they rescued all these children from orphanages. They found children actually couldn't thrive at all because they had not been held. They had not been nurtured. They'd just been left in cribs and just barely kept alive with food. And it's absolutely a fact that touch and human touch and nurturing, especially in the formative years, is huge. So, yeah, and can I just ask you, do you think you were the only child? How many children were there? 5?
There were 5.
Were you
I know my mother had 3.
That's interesting.
But all of the babies died.
Yeah, that's interesting because just a strangeness. I think I know you so well, but I'm one of 5, but my mother also miscarried 3, and I was hoped to be a boy. In fact, I wrote a poem, Daddy Always Wanted a Boy. They said 3rd time lucky, but I wasn't. And apparently there was huge upset each time another girl was born, And even my father, as he's got into he's 90 now, but in his 80s, he would come to my house and see my sons and say, I'm so jealous of you. All I ever wanted was a son. I'd be like, Dad, you're not supposed to say that to me. But anyway, so I just wanted to ask, to your knowledge, were you the only one abused, or was it more widespread in the family?
No, it went through the entire family. Each child.
Okay.
Right. Well, becomes a game of chess.
Say that again. Sorry.
Now it becomes a game of chess.
Okay. Yeah.
With a functional family is that each child is given a role depending upon what that parent, one or both, project on them. And that at that point and there is some truth, there might be some quality, but a lot of times that's brought out in a negative fashion. There are some really bad that have happened, and they seemed unbearable at the time. But in retrospect, I see how all of these misfortunes added to my strength and to the character that I am. So
I hear
my
that.
whole purpose. I really, I guess what I wanted to say, Angela, before we go any further, is I hope in the future I could be of some assistance to people throughout their various levels of what they're going through.
Yeah, which you absolutely are. You absolutely are. You can tell that you've walked a lot of years in your healing, and you're not just my go-to person for cheering up. I actually come to you for advice, and I know that I'll get good advice from you. So you've achieved that, and I think that's phenomenal. And I watch your gifts as well with the animals. Can you tell us a little bit about the exotic animal breeding that you do? Because I see that as a very profound level of empathy. There's something, it's like when humans are hurt by humans, sometimes they will redirect their energy into caring for animals, and it goes to a very deep level. Can you talk a little bit about your exotic animal farm?
Well, certainly. Well, it's not just exotic animals. There's a lot of domesticated animals as well, and farm animals, and it's just animals. So we're constantly striving to create an environment that's conducive to that species of animal, yet allows awareness of each other's species while protecting each one. It is, my husband terms it as Steffi world, because I have made it sort of a gated community for the exotics. Everything's done landscaped, septic systems, warm rooms, actually, if things go bad, I could possibly live in one of these flats. So there's quite a bit of it. And in addition to that, there's additional landscaping and
How many acres do you farm?
this is only 10 acres. It originally started as 7.5. And there's an incredibly interesting story behind the attraction I had to this location. It was only land, and I don't want to get too on the spiritual end, but
no, you can. You can. Steffi, you can get spiritual.
I can get a lot of things too. I can also get profound, but well, no, not profound. That's another word. Profanity. We won't do that.
You can get profane or spiritual or profound. Honestly, just be you.
I am. I have tried to be a multitude of other things. It never works. Right. I'm the type of person you can mess up, but be surprised what comes out of her mouth. But going back to the animals, really that was, I think my parents sort of threw me into that and didn't even realize it. They threw a kitten at me one day to keep me quiet, and I was in my room, and here I had a kitten, and all of a sudden I had someone to interact with. I was allowed interaction to some degree with the family as a witness. So that's, and as a result, I was always turned to as an old soul. So what it was is I really wasn't exposed to things of my age that would be more age appropriate. It was listening to other conversations. And, I just had a brain, and so you learn on figuring things out, sometimes beyond what you should comprehend. A child's brain, just like any other animal's young brain, is extremely charged and receptive, and they take on their atmosphere and the environment, and that's how they learn to survive. These are all inherent traits. You can either dumb them down, and not enhance them or not culture them, or as a result, a lot of that is also going to be variant on the species that you are dealing with, or the individual that you were dealing with, because we are different people. We react to stimuli differently.
Yeah. Yeah, I've noticed, because both my son and I have a visual impairment. His is more severe than mine. But I've noticed when one of your senses is either understimulated or undernourished, the other senses heighten. So, for instance, Jamie was visually impaired, but his hearing is hyper developed and his sense of touch and smell is hyper developed. It just seems to be that the brain will compensate. So, and I think you find as well that children have suffered trauma in childhood. It's a very common thing that not only the downside is there can be ailments like ADHD and Asperger's and autism and, neurological pathway issues, but the upside is that there can be highly, highly developed intuition, empathy, genius, analyzing, connecting with animals, though, because there's one sense not getting nurtured, or more than one, the others are actually reaching, the brain pathways are going deeper. So you were going to say something about there was an amazing story to the land that you bought.
Well, just that when we first moved here, we had a friend here in Oklahoma that set us up in her extra house trailer, so we could, my husband could get a job and we could get enough money saved up to buy our own property. So As a result, her father-in-law had about 80 or so acres. He had divided them up. And originally his goal was to do an airplane park where you had a lot of, where you had the airstrip and the people in the community, they had access to, oh goodness, you would think I used to work in the avionics field. I would know this, to a hangar, an airplane hangar where they could, fly their plane. This was his grand scheme. Unfortunately, the location of where he was at did not pan out. But anyway, so a lot of riffraff was moved into the neighborhood because he had to. Anyway, we were looking at property. He was, that we were going to owner finance with him. And I saw a piece. Everything he was showing me was like 2 acres, 3 acres. And I said, no, I have to have land. I have to have as much land as possible. And I was always like this as a child. And my parents always thought that was odd. Where did I come up with I needed land? So, but I did. And he pointed at a piece of property. He said, well, I said, actually, that piece would work. I said, but it's only about 5 acres. And he's like, how did you know that? I said, I don't know. It's not enough. He goes, interesting. There's 2.5 acres next to it that I own, or I'll be getting back. So I'll sell you the 7.5 acres.
Right.
And there was a structure on it that he was going to rebuild into a house for us. And he did slap it together. But during that process, let me backtrack a little bit. This property he was owner financing it to another gentleman who was an ex-Green Beret, who was a pedophile. He was a pedophile, and he used to bring boys into this makeshift home so he could draw their picture. And I'll leave the rest to you. When this guy had really sort of lost touch with reality, the entire property was booby-trapped with tons and tons of sharded glass. There was no running water. He bathed in the runoff of whatever went into the crevice from the runoff. The property was eroding away, and he had a lot of dogs that they just kept breeding. You were constantly, instead of seeing roadkill on the side of the road, you would see multiple puppies dead. And so there was always rumors that floated around this gentleman that he just ate the dogs. Very odd gentleman. So what had happened was the police came and took him away due to animal cruelty. And to get bail, he sold the property back to Gene, or released his rights, so he could move back home. And then that enabled Gene to, in turn, set up the property for us. And going into the building to look at it, I remember seeing these drawings. What he had used for drywall was actually canvas pieces. The flat canvases, like you would draw a picture. And there was multiple stick pictures of people that almost looked like Martians. These were the children that he had drawn pictures of in this house. One of these days, I'll get a picture of what this looked like.
And did he ever get convicted? Did anybody ever prove what he was doing? Did any survivors come forward?
No, I don't think it was that situation. It was actually, no one went after him in regards to people or children. That was what was talked about. The actual charge on him was over these dogs.
It's amazing.
And
it's amazing.
So you think about where we've progressed. And I am an animal activist. I'm very strong into the rights of animals, but all life has value. We are tipping our pendulum to the point where we are as a society, we are putting the value of an animal higher than our own species.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you.
Totally wrong.
Good for you.
So
Glad you said that.
You have to look at that. You have to look at that picture because there are people celebrate. I see things like on Facebook, animal cruelty, and it is a horrible thing to watch. And I tell people, don't put that on there because actually you might find a distorted person that sees that and it gives them a charge as it would a sexual offender. And they play on that. And as a result, they start creating. It grows.
It's like the copycat thing. Yeah, I hear you. But I'm so glad that even though you're an animal, I consider you an animal whisperer. Like you're a bit of a, don't hide your light under a bushel. You're able to breed animals that you can breed animals that are nobody else can breed. We won't just talk about, but I'm so pleased that you.
Let's not do the bestiality thing. I don't breed any stuff.
Okay. No. I know your giftings, but okay, we'll move off of that. What I really want to cover with you, because when I interviewed you, we interviewed really on the personal stuff, and you and I can get down and dirty with that because we've both been through the horrors. But what I really want you to talk about is the vision. I remember I interviewed you for an hour in Ireland about an amazing vision you had, and my internet had been sabotaged over there and none of it recorded. So do you mind just take your time, like we have half an hour, take your time and just tell us about that amazing vision that you had.
Well, all right, well, I'll give you a brief history. This is something that I've always had as a child, and I think children are more prone to that. I would see things, I would walk into a room and there would be an entity there, and sometimes it would claim to be my sister or someone else. Come to the room, I'm moving the furniture, something that I could identify with that person, and I would start to walk into the room. I would feel an incredible temperature change, and I knew right away that this was not my sister. In fact, she was downstairs. So, I ran into things like that constantly. Even though my family really was doing a minimum amount of activity with me, things or entities were trying to contact me. And a lot of people will say, well, that's what a child does. They have imaginary friends, and things like that. These were far from imaginary. Some of these were actually relatives that I had never known of that had lived and died before my time. Sometimes, and a lot of that actually occurred when one of my sisters, she had a friend over, and she was dabbling a little bit in the occult, and they had a Ouija board, and they were playing the Ouija board, and my sister, that was the one time they allowed me in the living room as long as I was quiet. And it was one of those techniques, if we bring her along and make her an accessory, then she can't tell on us because she's guilty too. I didn't care. I was just going along with the vibe. Well, during whatever they were doing with their hands and this board and playing around, and their friend was telling them of the different spells they knew, and they were doing things like levitation. That's when my one sister, Sylvia, she needed nose spray, and she asked me to go get for her and some Kleenex. And I went upstairs, and that's when I started going to the room, and I saw a shape in there that was trying to move furniture, and they claimed to be my sister Elise. Elise was downstairs, and I immediately, at first I started to fall in, and I said, no, something's not right. I went back downstairs, sat down. My sister said, where's my nasal spray? And I looked at her and I said, you get it yourself. There's something up there.
Okay.
And so that was where things started. All right, I'll leave it at that. And things grew from there.
Okay, tell me what age you were then.
I might have been, I wasn't even in school yet, maybe 5.
Wow. Wow.
Okay, I was very advanced for my age. My parents always told my family and any other onlooker that I was autistic. Now, they had not put the name Asperger's on it. They just said autistic because people would ask them, what's wrong with her? Because, I would crawl around on the floor and just be an animal all the time. And they would just say, oh, she's autistic. She doesn't have a capability of learning. I was taking it all in. It's just a situation. I learned if I was silent, I would be allowed to watch and observe. And I picked up on everything. So
Wow.
That's where I was able to notice things, changes in the air or temperature changes or voices. These were schizophrenic activities. These were things that people during, they just use touch on. It's like dropping a sentence. And a lot of times technology has something to do with it, but it wasn't as technical in those days. We're looking at the 60s. I remember as a child when Kennedy was assassinated. So
Yeah.
I remember watching that on TV over and over and over again. I was born in 1961. When was Kennedy assassinated?
I don't know, was it 65?
No. I think he was 63, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Okay, so you were 2 years old.
So, and to remember visions like that. And so those key elements were, I remember a lot of things like that. Every other day was basically the same day. So because of the routine that we had. But going on to this vision, so I already had a background of seeing things. And I was in a point in my life working with some people who had really bad intentions because I was very much into this is how you run this business. I was one of these people that was very much top of the field, but yet even as an adult, because I was in my 30s at this point, 30s, 40s, when I sort of got onto the internet and started talking to people about animals, and they were like, I think at that point it was Yahoo groups, and they were like, who is this person we've never heard of that knows about this animal, this animal, this animal, and who is she, and what has she done? So you talk to me about trolls and people. You're going to find that in any aspect of what you do.
Yeah.
So as a result, though, I did have some people or a couple people approach me for my assistance. And I was very naive because throughout that period of life, to me, my worst enemies were always my family because they were the ones I was always fighting. Yeah. I was never nurtured or prepared to recognize a bad person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Run into that because you attract your own neuroses. So being a victim, of sexual child abuse, and as you grow, you carry that stigma, and predators will spot that. It's just like animals will look for a wounded or an elderly animal to attack.
Yeah.
Not to get you in depth, but to give you some background on this. Surrounding that situation, I was extremely saddened by the awareness of what was going on. I knew these people were, their agenda was hidden, and it was not good. But it was my hopes that I could show them the benefits of doing things properly, and it just doesn't work. And I've since learned that. But as a result of that, I was under a lot of spiritual attack. I had things started happening here on the property. Animals started dying suddenly with no apparent cause, rhyme, or reason. And I could hear them. Golly gee, this sounds horrible now. I could hear them crying like they were in another dimension. And at one point, you know, I really thought I was losing my mind. My husband came out one day and he was like, "Who is that screaming? What is that noise?" I said, "That is the baby that died 5 days ago."
Oh, yeah.
And he was like, "Where's that noise? It sounds like it's coming from, it sounds like it's coming from the animal room." I said, "It is. The baby's body is in the freezer."
Oh.
So, you know,
so it's almost, in layman's terms, it was almost like a haunting.
This was a lost spirit looking to find its home, looking to cross over, hadn't crossed over yet. It was removed before its time. It was, I mean, that's the only best way I could explain it.
Okay.
But we had other things going on to the property that were so, you know, just to look at it, you would go, yeah, you're a little odd. But if you add those pieces together, like you said earlier, you connect the dots and they all form a circle.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's why I was struggling on how to give you some background to this vision. I'll try to accelerate that a little bit more. That was just several days before the actual incident.
Yeah, take your time. Just relax. I'm enjoying this.
Okay, well, I didn't realize I wasn't taking my time. I'm sorry.
It's okay. You said you were going to accelerate. It's okay. Carry on.
No. I guess that would put you in a minor state of alarm, wouldn't it? Oh my God, what does that mean? She accelerates. I've never seen her accelerate before. I wish she had done that before we got on this program. Then,
no, it's like I'm getting used to the idea of a 2-hour show, and although it takes some focus for viewers to say, right, I'm going to set aside 2 hours, but it's really, there's no pressure. So that's all I'm saying is just relax and enjoy it. I really want to hear this.
okay, I'll try to relax and enjoy it. Excuse me. Well, so it was sort of like the situation leading up to this vision that I had, or this spiritual attack, or whatever it was. It didn't just boom. It built up. It was almost like a storm was brewing, and you knew a storm was brewing. I would walk into, and my husband and I, when we first moved into this property, we would be in the other room, the other one would come running in and go, "What did you want?" And I was like, "What are you talking about? You tapped me on the shoulder, you called my name, you laughed." No, honey, I didn't do it. I was constantly having someone pull me and say, "Mom, Mom," and our kids would be upstairs or sleeping or not even there.
Oh.
So, there was, and I don't know if this was due to the building on the property but there was a lot of negative atmosphere between my husband and myself at that time, which helped. It helped crack the foundation to let these negative things start to manifestate. But I mean, it was obviously, I knew something was up. Like I would go into a room, I'd walk by, and the light would dim, or a radio would come on, or I would hear voices through the TV, and I'd say to my husband, "Well, we need to fix the wiring again." And some things there were technical explanations for, and a lot of times they weren't. So the night that had happened, I had received, I already knew what was going on with these people. There was sort of like trying to set me up for a failure type situation. And I was in complete despair over that, because even though I knew these people were not good people, okay, that they had their own agenda, I really had the hopes that they cared enough for me and that their words were true. And there was a final straw that helped. This one woman had come and visited me, and she had told me one day, well, you know, I'm a Wiccan, and I was like, well, good for you. I was raised Catholic. I guess, you know, I'll always be Catholic. It's one of these things that they can really set you up, and they reconfirm that commitment through baptism, confirmation, all that. But yeah, so you can leave the Catholic Church, but you're a Catholic. So it really didn't bother me. It was like, whatever, float your own boat. But she had come and visited me and brought some gifts, which I thought were very, that struck me as odd. And I was like, you know, one was a dagger. One was a bowl with a maiden attached to it. And, you know, the upper portion of it was, she was nude. Various types of incense and things. And I looked at that and I said, wow, it looks almost like you got some kind of mumbo jumbo thing going on here. Oh no, I thought you'd like the smell. Oh no, I thought you'd like this. Isn't this pretty? And I was like, well, I'm really not into knives. And, you know, a stuffed animal would have been great. And then she gave me two beautiful dangly sets of earrings with some gems. And she said, she made it a point to tell me that they were specially blessed by a high priestess. And I was like, okay. So these items were on the coffee table, but I noticed, and I didn't really make the connection at first, that what was going on in our household and through every individual in the family. No one was really telling me. My boys were being visited by things in the evening. It was just, and you try to pawn it off and saying you're scared of the room. There was just a lot of things that were going on all at the same time. But on this one particular evening, it had reached a point. I tried to contact this lady to let her know I knew what had happened, and I knew what she had done, and I was rather saddened by it, but it was what it was. I could not contact her. And so and it was my habit to constantly walk the grounds where the animals were, and just, you know, because I was a night person, I was doing the night chores while everyone else was asleep. And it was very sad and very much of my own grief. I remember coming in from outside into the living room, and immediately, at this point, there was just one table lamp on. And we had a night light at the end of the stairs for the boys. But that's when things started happening. When I walked into the living room, I started hearing voices out of the, like a broken, like a radio station. You could not quite get, you know, the channel in. And then I'd walk over to it and I'd turn off the radio. And then I was like, oh, the radio's not even on. I would start to walk down the hall to go to the restroom, and the light near me would get extremely bright, and then when I walk away, it would get back dim. You know, I noticed a chill, and it just felt like there was a lot of static electricity. I went and turned the light off, and I said, it's time to go to bed. Everyone else is asleep. And I'm assuming it was getting close to between 2:30 and 3 a.m. I walked into the bedroom and started to get ready for bed, and I had just gotten into bed, and I still was putting the covers over me when I heard this incredibly large, it was like a boom, like a child had fallen out of the bed upstairs, only it was sonic. It it felt like it shook the house. It was that large. And I waited a minute because I was like, did someone fall out of bed? I mean, if Justin had fallen out of bed, and very short little bed, there's no way he could have made that noise. And it was a different type of noise. You can hear when your kid falls out of bed. It's like thunk, and you're like, then you hear her cry. This was different. This was like a boom. It was like a sonic boom that literally shook the house. And I remember looking over at my husband, who was asleep, like, did you hear that? You know, going back a track, my husband was actually with me years earlier when my mother had passed away, when she came and visited me. Oh boy, this is going to sound great. And that same sonic boom, we were in a different house, that same noise happened, only this time we heard it too, but you know, that was years ago. So I did recognize this noise, and due to my background, I knew this wasn't a child falling out of bed.
Okay, you knew something supernatural.
Yeah, right. Plus, you know, what had been happening earlier in the evening and in the week before. You know, I was like, okay, here it is. The grandpa's getting ready to speak. You know, it's just, you just know.
Yeah.
So I sat up in bed and waited, and I could feel the change in the temperature, and it was almost like static electricity. Now, to give you a little bit of a background on our house, we have a lot of additional lighting put up through the normal electricity company, because we had a lot of methamphetamine dealers and drug dealers directly across the street from us. So to keep, oh my God, I saw that look on your face. There's so many stories I could tell you. But I'm going to try to stay on track here. Like the time the plane flew overhead and the drugs fell out and the people ran out, and I was cleaning aquariums, and I was like, wow, look at that. What's that falling out of that plane? But anyway, that's another story. So we had lights on to protect our property, so we could see if some of these people would come on to our facility. So as a result of that, your room was pretty well, I could see the hallway. And during the time, I saw, thank you, sweetie, I saw a shadow start to form. And it was almost like smoke. And I sat and watched it take a shape. And it was a very large shape. I'm going to say, and ironically, it almost looks like a nun, the shape that formed. A nun in a habit, because there was a flat head, and this was all black, okay? It was basically a shadow on the wall. And so I kept looking around to see if there was something perhaps off the road that was causing this, to generate. And then I said, no, Stephanie, you saw this compile. So, I mean, I remember thinking to myself, how calm and cool and collective I am. Why aren't I waking up my husband? Why, it was almost like this was a new show for me. So, but I was very, very impressed with the fact that I wasn't running for the covers, and maybe perhaps I was already under the covers. So in addition to this form that manifested, I noticed off of it 4 or 5 other smaller shapes. And they were almost the size of, in comparison to, let's say, maybe a toddler, a child. And even though I was only looking at the profile, I saw this image turn. Its head just turned as it was going down the hall. It stopped at the doorway. It paused just for a moment, and turned its head and looked at me. And that's what really caught my attention, because there was just two large almond-shaped red eyes, glowing red eyes. And that's what I knew. This is not, this isn't coming off. And no, I didn't go across the street and partake of what the news had. I was really seeing this, and I just froze. And I remember having all these feelings and noticing that what was looking at me, I didn't feel fear. I felt as if it was looking at me like, oh, there you are. I was so insignificant that almost like it was in another dimension. It happened to see me, and then it just moved on. It really looked at me as if I was very irrelevant. And that could have been partially why I wasn't so afraid, but so fascinated by it. Then I saw it like turn what I presumed to be its head, and it started to move down the hall. Well, remember these 4 or 5 other little creatures? They sort of disconnected themselves, and they came into the bedroom. And they started like gliding up the walls of the bedroom, all the way surrounding our bed. Now, going back to this thing that left, when it got out of my sight, then I heard the little baby, the little kinkajou baby who had passed away, starting to cry. It was almost like this thing came for it. I don't know how to explain it. And then its cries got further and further and further away, like it moved on, like it wasn't there anymore. That's sort of understand, like you hear something 20 feet away, then 30 feet away,
Yeah, I've had dreams like that. I just want to hold you a minute. I just wanted to interrupt for 1 minute, because I remember you only told me the bones of this story, but I remember you saying that the look from the nun-type entity was totally crushing and humiliating, and possibly reminded you of all those years of being insignificant and ignored and treated like an animal or whatever. But I remember you saying that you felt crushed by the insignificance projected onto you by that nun-type entity as it left the room.
Well, I wasn't crushed by it. I noted that. I was like, wow. I found that very interesting, because in the past, when something's tried to contact me, there's usually been a message or something, or some type of, either it was to transfer information about someone else, or it was to make contact for, which I did not, because I felt the intentions were good. This, I just sort of felt like I happened to be in this thing's space. It noticed me and moved on. Okay. So that's the insignificant part of it. Why was I able to see this? And yet, obviously it saw me, but it was not, it didn't care. It was like looking at a tree, or whatever was going on at that time. Okay. It knew I noted it. It did not, it didn't bother it. It carried on. Okay. So, but these other things, that's the significant part of it, because it was almost like they had mischief behind them. Because while this thing had left, these entities had gone into the bedroom, and they were literally just gliding all over. And that's what gave me some sense of alarm. I looked at that and I was like, trying to keep my eyes on these guys. And I just kept, and they just haphazardly, it was almost like, oh, we're going to be busy until you're not looking. And it became an onslaught. I was like, I cannot look at these things anymore. I'm going to try to go to sleep. It is what it is. the minute I went to try to close my eyes, one just rushed right off the wall, and I felt it. I opened my eyes just for a brief moment to feel this ice cold gust. Something physically passed through me. But when it passed through me, that's when I got like pictures. It was almost like watching an old movie that a news clip that would show you this is what's going on in Africa. This is what's going on, that you might see at the beginning of a movie theater, something that's talking about an occurrence in another world. And each time I would get filled with these images that like made no sense to me. I was like, I was onslaughted because here I expect, what do you expect when you see something fly off on the wall and go through you? You don't know what to expect, right? So this was, I've never had anything like this. I was getting images of places in the world I had never been. Horrible things of people, children being raped, bodies mutilated, children with extremely swollen bellies that almost looked fat, but they were skeletons. People tied with a rope or something, following a line. Desert, no water, no air, no food. It was the absence of things, and which each image, I felt something physically being pulled out of my body, and as it was being pulled out, it was ice cold, and it was so it was like almost like something of mine I didn't know I had was being extracted, and I was giving something else. I do not know how to explain it, but at the same time, I'm seeing these visions. I'm finding myself more and more at peace. Yeah, okay, and that, well, because calm might be the way, or placid, or almost maybe because these were other people. They weren't me. I didn't know them. I don't know. I really don't know why, but I know that I was left being still. And this went on for, it seemed like hours. I'm sure it was a very short amount of time. And I remember being so physically drained. And I was like, enough of this. And that's when I started seeing images from my childhood that frightened me. And one was a doll that a particular doll that actually it freaked everyone out in the house, in my family. As I grew up, I had that doll. I actually shipped it to my brother. One year, my brother shipped it to me as a Christmas gift. I mean, it became a funny joke because this doll just scared the bejesus out of everybody. It's just a freaky little doll. And so that's what broke this chain, is that I looked over to the side of the bed, and there was this doll standing there looking at me. And that's when I was like, I had enough. I reached over and I tried to hit my husband, and I was very effective, but he still slept through it. And so I had no voice. Have you ever been in a dream, a nightmare state, and you want to scream, but nothing? So it became very gurgling. And I was like, help. And finally, he turned around and he woke up. Yeah. And he was like, oh my God, what has happened to you? And I was like, and by this time, it was almost 5 o'clock in the morning. Wow. I had gone to bed between 2:30 and 3. Wow. So this had gone on for that length of time. And he turned to me you have a nightmare? Because you haven't even slept. He goes, what happened to you? You know, and I was like, it was here. And I tried to explain it to him. And because, you know, when my husband and I first started dating, he used to say, oh, you know, that stuff doesn't exist. But because, unfortunately, he was with me when some things happened, he knew this was serious.
Yeah.
He had already also been experiencing some things in this house. So the relationship that I thought that was interesting, going back to this friend, he had claimed one time that she could do out of body, she could travel, you know.
Astral traveling.
Like,
yeah, astral traveling.
Okay. She was a very tall lady with black hair, and she had a creature called Cotamundi. She had several of them, and she always referred to them as imps, little imps. So my first thought was, this woman, okay, here's these items she brought to my house. She's already tried to disrupt the family, to, you know, to have an affair with my husband. She's already tried, you know, this type. So, you know, obviously she's very jealous of what I have of, you know, with the animals, with the fact I have a good job. So my first thought that this was a spiritual attack from her, and these little things attacking me were playful, mean imps, the little Codys she had, because Codys can be like that. That was my first thought. But as the day progressed, because, you know, I just got up and I went to work, and I was very much in shock. And I'm the type of person that, you know, I will tell anybody anything. It was, while I was trying to work, I would go to people at, you know, and I worked in a white collar engineering firm, and they had always known me for, you know, let's put it to you this way. I would make the joke that, you know, I was hired there for entertainment purposes, but actually my managers said I had what's called micrometer eyes. I could pick up things.
Yeah.
And, you know, documents and find error that no one other people could find. And so when I came to work, I was hysterical, and I kept going to people, and I kept saying, this happened to me last night. This is what I saw. And I was like, do you think I should go and have myself checked in to, you know, is this mental instability? You know, and then one manager, because you could hear everything, he walks out and he goes, Stephanie, honey, what were you drinking? I honestly think some things you just don't talk about. And I was like, what? I talk about everything. I talk about my father. I talk about my husband. I talk about everything here. You know,
That's like
guys
me.
are like, I see, and then I would like, look at these eyes. Have you ever seen eyes like that? And they're like, whoa. So a lot of people were uncomfortable. One or two people pulled me aside and said, Stephanie, I've seen some strange things also, but you don't talk about it here. So I was like, yeah, okay, all right, I get it. But still, I found myself obsessed with these eyes and just trying to find out what was the purpose behind it. I finally, because other things on our home were, you know, that I don't have to go into detail now, we're still going haywire. And I actually called this lady up, and I told her, you know, this happened to me. And she's like, really? Well, and I said, no, didn't you say that you could do this? So, you know, you had this quality. And she's like, are you saying I did this? And I said, well, I find it extremely interesting that I could make no contact with you earlier in the day or the evening or anything. And I'm calling you out. I really think somehow you are connected with this. I took everything that she had given me, including the earrings, and now I'm not a shaman, I guess you would say, but there are things that I've done instinctively that with no formal instruction. I went and got sage and some of my best plants, and I just herbs, and threw them on the ground and put these items there, and I torched them.
Yeah.
And I said a little prayer, and then a verse came out of my mouth. It rhymed perfectly. I found it very odd. I couldn't remember it after I said it. And my husband looked at me. He said, "That's very good." And I was like, "What's good?" And things started to, dissolve. But, this fire that we had going on these items went on for about 7 hours. All the glass items, even this metal dagger, were melted. And the interesting thing, though, when we were clearing the debris, because I got a trash bag. I didn't even want this stuff on the property. So as I was scraping it in the bag, the earrings were perfectly, nothing had happened to them. There was no way, there was no charring, nothing. And, my husband, he looked at that. He goes, "You need to get rid of that." And I said, "No, I'm not done with these. Something needs to be done with these yet. I don't know what it is." But I do remember she said those had been blessed. So, I don't take stock in this. This is not my belief system. But I noted that interesting. I threw them in a drawer and took everything else and disposed of it.
Good.
And then started to get better. But I guess the main thing about this vision, though, is because then I had to survive it. I had to process it. What was the result of this? Okay, because, for the first 48 hours, I was actually, maybe a week or so, I was rather traumatized from it.
Yeah.
And I had to internalize what I saw. And here's something that I find extremely, extremely interesting. I had always had empathy for living things and other people, but I was very much of, you could see very much the Asperger's into myself, because a lot of people thought I was, just self-absorbed. No. I would explain, this is how I do things, to see if they could find a relationship, you know what I'm saying, to try to find a common ground. And very often people would perceive what I was trying to do totally different. So they just basically thought I was a narcissist. It's the furthest thing from being a narcissist. I was trying to connect to people to find a common ground.
I know exactly.
But what okay, well, good. Well, what happened as a result is, it was like I was left with something. That's what blew me away, is the empathy that I felt for people that might have been subdued because I was what I refer to as living in the land of me. I became extremely aware of everyone's suffering, of their hardships, and I could, things that I normally didn't care about, I was very attuned to. And all of a sudden, my vision, I would come into work and I would be in a very good mood. I had some babies born. We were, going to, with this money, we could build this building, for the animals. And I would be at my desk for about 10 minutes or so. And next thing you know, I would be in tears. I would be so upset. And at first I was like, is this a medical condition? Well, it wasn't until I noticed that this was going on in regular pattern. I would get up and just walk down the cubies and, the cubicles of the different employees. We had several hundred there. And, and as you're walking down to go wherever you're going, you would hear the conversations, the different groups of employees, of, what was going on in their life. They were talking about something work related or what they saw that weekend. It's the office politics, I guess you could say. And, I would have this feeling of feeling bad, and didn't understand why. But as I got closer to a source, I went to a cubicle and there was this lady crying. She was crying to her girlfriend over something, you know, or a coworker, over something that had happened related to something at work, something I had no knowledge of. It was a totally different department. And boom, I was like, this is why I feel bad.
Yeah.
And it was almost like I could pick up on everybody's feelings. So then it was just like my attention span became even worse because I would be, and I could not look in people's faces. I would look in their eyes and I could see almost as if I knew what they were thinking. And I might be talking about something else and I would just respond to that look. And then people would go, you know, how could you say that? What are you, a friggin' psychic? And I was like, well, I know how you're taking this. I know how you're dealing with it.
It's a very heightened.
It just got extremely perceptive. One day I was walking to return to my desk, and there was a new hire there. At this cubicle. It's very hard if you haven't seen that type of environment. It's hard for you to visualize it. If you have a lot of desks, they might have partial walls, so there's somewhat obstruction from view, but everything is open air for the most part. So, you know, you can talk to the person across the hall if you need. But anyway, I was walking down this common area, and there was a new gentleman that had just been hired, or he was getting, you know, looking at the computer and filling out whatever he needed to do. And I remember just stopping dead in my tracks, and I was already known for saying things without putting a cap on it, okay? But this was a gut-felt reaction. I mean, and I was always very friendly with people, but with this particular guy, I was like, what are you doing here? Who are you? And people were like, Stephanie. They're like, oh my God, Stephanie's doing the Stephanie again. And I'm like, I just immediately said, I don't like you. You're not a good person. The minute I heard the words come out of my mouth, I thought, it was, how did you like the job that you have, Stephanie? Because you are out of here. You know, you're going to get fired. I turned around and I walked away, and I was like, I went right over to my manager's office. I was always known for, you know, sometimes I'd knock, sometimes I'd just walk in there and I'd go, look, I don't know what I just said, or something's not right. I apologize. I'll go back and apologize to this guy. I mean, you never knew what you were going to get at work with Stephanie. I made life interesting there, okay? Anyway, I went over to another department to do a task. The next morning I came in, that desk was empty. That gentleman wasn't there. And I immediately turned to another coworker and I said, I'm in so much trouble, you know. And this other coworker actually was a manager. And he turned to me, he goes, no, you wouldn't believe it. He goes, they brought him on early. They weren't done. The HR department was not done with his background check. This man has got a problem at his prior place of work that there's a possibility he might have sold some of the technology or given away some facts on one of the contracts he was working on.
Okay. Do you know what we're going to do, Steffi? We're going to take a 3-minute break.
It. I don't know.
No, but don't run away. We're going to take a 3-minute break, and then I'm just going to wind that up with you. I've got a couple of questions to ask you. We're going to go to break, and then we'll regroup and just wrap that up. Thank you so much for sharing that. And just mute your mic and come back on in 2.5, 3 minutes, okay?
Oh, certainly. Mute the mic. Well, okay. Oh, I see.
Okay.
So when I start to talk with no sound, I'll turn that microphone back on. Is that the plan?
Yeah. Biggie will tell us when we're on break. Okay, guys, we're back. And we've got some questions in the chat room, which I'll be happy to address. And we're going to wind up with Steffi. Are you with me, Stephanie?
Yes, and actually I was curious to see what some of our viewers or trolls, as you might suspect they are,
Yeah,
some of their
they're polite. They're polite trolls. I think I know who it is, but that's okay. I can deal with polite trolls. It's only the threatening ones that I forward onto the police. The class actions coming along very well. One of the questions was, how is the class action regarding trolling? And it's coming along very nicely. I think Nilu and Sabine's court case collapsing was a victory. It's a shame we didn't get to share all the evidence of malicious communications and intimidation and harassment, but that's being taken forward, and it will continue to be taken forward, although the legal system bores me a little because it's so corrupt. And I just love that saying, sometimes the law is an ass. I addressed at the beginning of the show, and Rupert had highlighted that it's very British to fight, slug things out in the law courts. And sometimes the law is an ass. So the one question was, I think I just answered that one. Another, I'm going to leave the final question for you to answer, Steffi, but I'll just answer the other couple. Do I stand behind Rupert and his approach to fighting pedophiles? I stand behind Rupert 100%. He's a young blood country boy, and sometimes he'll, testosterone and outrage will have him access, a language of, they need a square, bang on the jaw or whatever. He hasn't threatened to beat anybody to death, and if he has, I think he's always qualified it afterwards and said, look, I'm not looking for a fight, but I'm looking for this pedophilia, outrage to stop, and for the push to normalize it to be absolutely headed off at the pass. So, he's young, he's mad, and he's not a man of violence whatsoever in my experience. So, I think he has qualified over and over again that he wants to go as a media person and talk to people and listen to people and confront people and doorstep people and make a difference. So, that's the answer to that question. And then, Spain doesn't have an extradition treaty with England, but Lanzarote does. And to be honest, even if it did have an extradition treaty, I don't live in England. I have an Irish passport. I spend my time between Lanzarote and Ireland. I have done nothing wrong except for shout from the rooftops. Children are getting abused. Children are getting murdered. Children are getting trafficked. The courts are not doing the right thing. Laws are being broken. Things are being covered up. It's not okay. So I know there's plenty of people have gone to jail under false pretenses. I know Sabine and Nilu and Ben Fellows and Robert Green, and so many people have been unfairly treated by the justice system in the UK. But, I made my mind up to live my life, to do what I can to end child abuse. And I'm willing to die, but I'm more willing to live, to do this for as long as I have breath. So the final question. Yeah, Steffi.
Let me interrupt you on that. On what you were just saying about the attacks that you've received and how you're just screaming to the rooftop. That is something that, as a child, that's what I battled, okay? Because dealing with what was going on in my own household, I was constantly going to people saying, look, this is being done to me. This is not right. This is wrong. And I was dealt with in a different manner because of my age. Because of my age, I was basically said, no, you got to keep it quiet. People will only attack you. They will say that you instigated this. They will say this. So you will cause more bad harm on yourself.
Yeah.
Only thing happening now with the legal authorities is that they have advanced the same technique, but on a higher level, on a greater form of punishment. It is all you into silence. It is a control technique.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's brilliantly put, because it's the same tactic. You better shut up or you're in trouble. You better shut up or we'll sue you. You better shut up or you could go to jail. You better shut up or we'll take you.
Vitamin. It's an adult vitamin. You have the chewable, and then you got the one that's harder to swallow. That's what it is.
Yeah, yeah. So shame on them. So the final question, and I don't know if you've come across this, Steffi. You know, like Rupert did a joke upload of your whistling monkey thing, which is, you know, up to 2,000 views or whatever. And I shared our conversation. You know, I edited out some little tiny bits, but I shared our conversation with a joke on me too. My sense of you is, because I completely relate. We have so much in common. And I also know that aside from the class clown thing, there's this profound wisdom built out of pain, or born out of pain, and, you know, born out of just observing things that we had no power over. But there's been a tactic employed by Hampstead Research, and they've tried this before. It's like, oh, look what she's doing to poor Stephanie. Look at the way she's making a fool of her friend, and her friend begged her not to do it, and so on. So I'll read you the comment and I'll let you answer it, Stephanie. It says, can I ask whether you'll continue to upload embarrassing footage of Steffi now that she's begged you not to?
Well, I think, okay, here's the deal. Have you ever listened to a recording of yourself? And you listen and you're like, oh, is that how my voice sounds? Well, if it really bothered you, you want to take the vow of silence as a result. But it's never effective. It only lasts for about the same length of span of a goldfish attention. And the same thing applies. The only thing is, with a Skype or a video, it's the gift that keeps on giving. You can keep over and over again. And my concern is that some people might not find the humor that you obviously identified with. And other people might be bored by it, or because you got to remember too, the technical ability of the Skype at that point, it was very statically and jumpy. And so it betrayed me worse than it did. It was like, I watched this and I'm like, I didn't stutter that much. I would not have been able to get all the words out that I get out. I have had people tell me that, you know, a woman can say 3,000 words, a man's 300. Stephanie, you get out 6,000 words and you keep going. You can't breathe and yet you're still talking. How is that? So, no, I'm constantly downloading information. And if you don't listen to every word, you know, and sometimes there are multiple subjects because, you know, something else comes to mind, so I comment on it. It's very difficult to follow me at times.
The bottom line is, because I suppose where I come from, like October 2014, I thought I had 3 months to live. They were 99% sure I had end-stage ovarian cancer. And then I was healed. And then something broke in me. I finally, at 57 or whatever, decided I don't care what people think. And like all my life, I've been driven about, you know, what do I look like? What are people going to say? What are people going to think? And so on and so forth. And I just, when I got this new lease of life, I was like, do I care? Do I care? No, I don't. And it was this incredible freedom. So sometimes if I project that onto other people and think, who gives a damn? You know, I apologize, but I think, let me just ask you this. Would you ever Skype record with me again, or are you going to hide from me as the Wicked Witch of the West?
No, I just hope we get the technical aspect a little bit. So, move on. Okay, that, really, because when you, and sometimes I think this could be a result of the bad Wi-Fi I hear, or it could be, I don't want a conspiracy theory out. It's not like I'm all that important as far as the words of wisdom that we need to cut Stephanie's message off, or because
and in my defense, if you listen back, at the beginning you said don't record this, and then I said no, don't record this, and then if you listen back about 2/3 of the way through, you say, oh hell, put it up. So I
yeah, back, I'm like, okay, it is what
so, if I hurt your feelings, I apologize. If I presume because I don't give a damn that other people don't give a damn, I apologize. But I think I should maybe come with a warning that I'm a truther, and if people are going to be shy about truth around me, maybe they better have another BFF. Anyway, so that's that.
That's funny you mentioned that. So you say the BFF, because I had a friend I was helping. Her zoo had closed down, and they sort of dropped the whole thing on me. And there for a while, there were some concerns. They had to protect my safety because you had a lot of animal activists going after me because I essentially was moving these animals from the zoo and getting them relocated. So, but during that time, actually, I got to work with her a little bit one-on-one, and I knew her before. We became even more friends, and she goes, once this starts, I'm going to be out of here. And I said, oh. I said, so she goes, right now, you're my BFF. I said, oh, so I'm a TBFF, a temporary best friend forever. Is that what you're saying? She just loved my humor. I mean, we would go on the road and, we were, gathering tin cans or whatever we could to take into recycling so we could feed the animals. And they were going across town and picking up the donations from the various communities. And then, there was that's a whole story in itself because at one point she said, Stephanie, I really would love to do a real life show with you. She goes, how could you make something so exciting out of the most mundane work?
Yeah, no.
How could you run out in the middle of the freeway to get a tin can and stop traffic and talk to people and get out of the way and do it? And I was like, well...
You know what's refreshing? I don't mean to cut you off. I just want to cover some other stuff as well. But what's refreshing is very few people have full self-expression. And I know... socially, it's maybe not so acceptable. You're supposed to know, like I always joke about, did I just say that out loud? But I think a lot of the time people are just jealous when they see someone just saying it how it is and saying it how it is and seeing the absurd and speaking up an intuition. They're just jealous. That's where the discomfort comes from, because that's how children are. Children just speak their minds, But look, I want to cover something else in the last 10 minutes. So I just want to round up that vision that you had, because it's very clear to me that there was demonic activity going on in your life, probably from a very young age. But it also seems like there was a God connection, that saw you through. So I know you did some little rituals and you burned stuff and cleansed and so on, but when did you get connected to God and realize this is demonic activity? I don't need to be terrorized by this.
Well, I had always had a relationship with God. When you got nobody else to talk to, God's in your head, so he talks to you anyway. So I had that was an ongoing relationship, and it was just, I don't know, people would see, how do I put this in words? I wrote a little poem when I was 12 once and got an award for it. It was published, and it was basically, it was a school class assignment write about God. And basically, this is what I wrote up. God is everything good to me. Birds in the sky, the leaves on the tree, a friendly hello, a sweet goodbye, always reminds me that God is close by. He's good. He's grace. I've never seen his face. He's clean. He's kind. He's a special friend of mine. So that's it. What's a friend? A friend is there when things are bad. They're good. They're with you all the time. So I've always, even at my lowest point, knew God was there. You know, he got burnt into my fabric. You know, I could yell at him. I could be angry. You know, then I could go back and go, oh, remember what I said? I really didn't mean it. Now I'm gonna ask for something. Can you do that? And to realize, you know, yet there's a lot of people jealous of me because they were like, even in the animal world, how come all these things seem to come your way? My husband, I don't know if you're familiar with the cereal from General Mills with the little elf called Lucky Charms. They're magically delicious, by the way. That's what they say. But, you know, it's supposed to be symbolic of good luck. My husband one day said to me, what happened to you, Stephanie? Have you sat on a box of Lucky Charms? And do you have a box of Lucky Charms shoved up your ass? Because it's like everything you touch turns to... No, I think what it is that I've been true to myself, and I've been blessed with having the heart that I have. Now, I've had some bad times. I've done some bad things. When you're born, you have sin, okay? The thing about it is, and I was always very proud of not being a liar. One thing I realized, though, I was a liar. Very often I would lie to myself about why things were happening. I only had one perspective. So, and that's really the main thing. I guess I can see your puzzle book on your face. When you are trying to accept the truth, you've got to remember that you cannot change anyone, you cannot manipulate, or you cannot control their thoughts. The only thing that you control is yourself and how you look at things. And so I could look at a situation and feel totally like a victim, when in reality, I'm like, I'm not a victim. I have allowed this person to do this to me.
I have to make a disclaimer. Not in childhood. In childhood, you didn't allow it. You didn't manifest it. You didn't create it. And I was slightly like uncomfortable because I said to myself, oh, I was supposed to be a boy, or oh, I wasn't planned, or so on and so forth. And it's a known fact that children internalize when bad stuff happens to them. They internalize it and they make it their fault.
I didn't. I didn't. That's the thing. I was always fighting. I was always, no, this is wrong, wrong, wrong. It wasn't until I reached another point in my life in my 20s that conditioning started to work. Then I started blaming myself for things. So then what was done, oh, thank you, honey. You know what I'm saying? Then that kicked in. That social engineering started to kick in. And that's where another battle came on. Okay, but as a child, no.
As a child, you knew it was wrong. Okay. Well, I'm going to ponder on what you've shared, because it's strange to me that it seemed like demonic entities led you into a vision of seeing the suffering of the world, but it had a good outcome because it made you hyper empathetic. It made you heightened, just that you could feel other people suffering, and that's called, you know, in my paradigm, that's the compassion of Christ. I have that. I hurt for people. I say my heart hurts if I see someone suffering. It's like I can feel it. I can cry with them. It's like, oh, you know, it's not supposed to be that way. And my daughter used to ask me sometimes, because she was abused, you know, multiple times. And she used to say, why me, Mummy? Why me? And I just used to say, there's no answer. I'm so sorry. You know, you didn't deserve it. And the only thing I could say to her was, the more you have suffered, the more grace God gives you to to rise above it, you know, not just to endure it, but to actually overcome it. So I just want to thank you. I've only got 10 minutes left, and I just want to update people on the Lowell Goddard resignation. But I just want to thank you for being my friend, and thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you for tolerating me.
Shut up. Shut up. No, but let me. I want to thank you for being my friend.
The sermon came along with that. I got to add that point in there. Don't lose it on this thread. Okay. Now you got 8.5 minutes. There you go. I'll let you know.
No, I want to thank you for being my friend, and also for being a great and also for your empathy and for what you've overcome. I mean, if people want to know more, you know, there are videos on my YouTube channel where I've interviewed Steffi, and you know, she's like me, we're blurters. Pretty much, you ask us anything, we'll tell you. Because it's not our shame. It's not our shame. You know, we didn't deserve that. We're children of God. Listen, I love you to pieces, and I'll talk to you soon. And I'm just going to spend the last few minutes reading the thread about Lowell Goddard's resignation and whether it had anything to do with some evidence that was put into the mission. So I'll talk to you soon, and thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, you're so welcome. And I want to do a thank out to the technical people, and definitely a shout out to all. I love you. You guys are great. Keep up the good work. Yeah. You know, you give me something to fight for. Okay. Just do a little bit better, a little bit more personal next time. So
okay.
All right. Have a good day. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Say hi to Tim.
I will do.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Now, let me see. I'm going to find... Thank you, guys, for sharing that with me. Steffi's an absolute joy. I want to read you. I can do this on the... I've got two computers, a bit fancy. Let's find it. This is, I suppose, more localized to England. I talked with Rupert about this on American Freedom Radio, and he did say that, you know, in some parts of the world, they won't understand what we're saying in terms of, you know, a commission of inquiry in the UK and so on. But, you know, the UK has allocated millions upon millions to hold an inquiry estimated to take 7 years to investigate institutional abuse and cover-up. And so we're on our third judge with that, which is quite disconcerting. And so Justice, she was made a dame by the Queen in the meantime, Justice Lowell Goddard stepped down while we were broadcasting last Thursday, and Brian Gerrish rightly said that his police whistleblower could have had something to do with it. And I believe, based on the intel, that my police whistleblower's intel also could have had something to do with it. And that's not to take credit for it. I'm not particularly thrilled that she's resigned, and I know there's much more to the story. But I just thought people deserve to get some of the back info as far as what Richard had said, because it ties up with New Zealand, which is amazing. Then you've got to always relate to England like it was, they saw themselves as the British Empire. So Australia, Canada, New Zealand, you know, in some cases were just regarded as outposts for paedophilia to carry on, so say under the radar. I post so prolifically on Facebook. I should have lined this up, but I will find it shortly. Angela Power Disney on Facebook, and Angela Power Disney or Angie Power Disney YouTube channels, as well as as well as the CCN website. Yep. Note to self: next time, line it up. Or post less on Facebook. Here it is. yeah, still fallout from that, and still highly unusual for the justice to have stepped down with immediate effect, because her contract said 3 months notice on either side. So we haven't got the full story at all, but I just wanted to share a few comments that were relevant. If you will comment. So prolific, there's just so much, there's so much evidence. They don't need to spend millions and 7 years. The evidence is all there, all there. All they've got to do is listen to the survivors and join the dots. I'm making a pig's ear of this, as my mother would say. Facebook, sort this out. How can we, I should have saved the link. Yeah, so Anonymous did a beautiful announcement of it with a, just here it is now. So I think it went up to a vast amount of comments, but I'll just read the ones that are relevant to New Zealand. So, and this is from Richard, who's given me permission to use his name now. So, and there's also somebody in New Zealand who knew Lowell Goddard and her family in childhood, following this very closely and giving me feedback on how the New Zealand media are reporting it. So my New Zealand contact, yeah, they just had a short discussion on the Radio New Zealand about Lowell and her salary being very high, 500k. What wasn't discussed is, can we expect a fair result, ostensibly against the establishment, when she's paid such a high pay package by the establishment? That's a fair comment. And then he says, interesting that she resigned. How do you think she felt compromised and so decided to bail out rather than be pushed to clear the names of the elites and the MPs, etc., and face a possible public backlash? Now, someone had made a mitigating comment that even though she was on $500,000 package here, she was earning about 200 grand a year in New Zealand as a judge, although she was ranked 63rd in a poll of 63 judges. But I was willing to give her a chance. I was hoping. So I said she either got a conscience after listening to the horrors that victims suffered, or she gathered up enough money to retire back home, or she got elbowed out by Theresa May. Because don't forget, we've had a change of Prime Minister, and Theresa May's not great on this child abuse thing. Now let's get to the New Zealand stuff, because we're running out of time. Have fun. I hope you've enjoyed this. Okay, here we go. Some of the sort of deeper stuff. So my source says, I think she thought she was on a nice little earner, would end up recommending new guidelines and saying lessons have been learned and blah, blah, blah. But when she sussed Dame Janet Smith, Sir Keith Joseph, Jack Straw, Sue Ryder, Leonard Cheshire, did he, by the way, have a New Zealand lover? He had spawned during his honeymoon with Sue Ryder in New Zealand. No, New Zealand. Did he have a New Zealand love child with Sue Ryder, like Jana, etc., etc.? Did she suss out that this could be very difficult? And then he said, I talked about her playing dumb, saying she didn't understand what the word establishment meant in the UK, but it's on record that she'd hobnobbed with Charles and Camilla, and you know, if you look at her first husband, he's elite family, so I'm sure that was a total red herring to say what does establishment mean. So we talked about some of the hobnobbing being in Norfolk, just next to Suffolk, and then which goes into detail. Johnny, the New Zealand contact says, it makes me wonder how and when the UK will reach resolution with the inquiry. It looks to me that The establishment just wants to keep the whole thing in a closed loop, recycling over and over and over, which is so sad, chairpersonnel. And possibly she might be threatened with a lot at stake. Maybe she, it wasn't worth it. There is something very odd about giving no notice and that being accepted. It seems like there was a clashing of heads. Now, here we go. Right, so McGill dead is dangerous. Sir John Stradling Thomas, MP, had just taken it up when he died at his Dolphin Square home in 1991. There were document burglaries, special branch intimidation, etc. Mail intercept on the next Tory MP to get Sir John's constituency. Suspect mail intercept on the Attorney General and the Home Secretary also. And then, so it looks like the agencies, MI5, MI6, etc., may interfere with the judiciary. How can anyone deal with that level of interference? Damn corrupt government departments. Shakes head. Running out of time. There's more here if I can cram it in. Detective Sergeant with the Regional Crime Squad, Wales, 1972, stumbles on a GP death registration malpractice or fraud in the UK. Leonard Cheshire and Sue Riderhope decides it's an identity theft matter, which it wasn't, well, maybe. The Vatican rat lines for escaping Nazi war criminals. Question mark. Special branch threaten him to drop the inquiry. He defies them. He goes northwest to liaise with an observant PC coroner's officer. Gets a suicide verdict. MI5 with Chief Constable permission. Steal the RCS case file. So volunteer New Zealand matron. This is the connection. I may have to continue this on Thursday. 6 till 8, Chasing Rainbows. So volunteer New Zealand matron McGill at headquarters of the charities in Suffolk formed suspicions and drowned in the headquarters home boating lake. Suicide verdict. The RCS Detective Sergeant dies in Wales. When Barbara Castle MP raised matters in the Commons regarding matron McGill, inmate Stephania Bronk also died face down in her bath. Suicide verdict, July 1972. And her inmate husband had died 3 weeks earlier, prescribing error accident. It's not for the faint-hearted. I'll leave it there for now and pick up and continue this on Thursday. I'll do a half-hour section on the Richard's intel, which continues to boggle the mind. But this, I've read the whole thread, this part of it, and there's more, which connected up with New Zealand, which is where Justice Lord Gardon is from. So, none of us really know, but it's making a difference. Shows like this, shows like Brian Garish, shows like American Freedom Radio, independent media is making a difference. And long may it last. Please donate to the channel, donate to Rupert's GoFundMe, my GoFundMe. Just make it part of your life to set something aside to help create a better life, especially from where I come from, for children. This is Angie signing out. Join me on Thursday for Chasing Rainbows from 6 to 8, and thank you so much. Thanks to Steffi, thanks to Biggie, and thanks to Mel. God bless.